Hey, folks, thanks for joining us for another episode of Construction Over Coffee. Today, I have Paul Bain, estimator over at Tellefsen with us today. We're going to be covering a variety of topics. And Paul, it's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here.
Awesome. So, Paul, let's start with you telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, a little bit more about your firm, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So, Jeff, I work in pre-construction at Tellefsen Builders. Tellefsen Builders is a 112-year-old company rooted in the Houston area. They actually have 5 different market sectors that they cover. We have an industrial branch, we have an interiors branch, we do some special services, and then we have the commercial branch that I work for. I started out in the field in project management and quickly moved my way into the office, into pre-construction, where I found my passion in construction. We are a CMAR delivery method contractor. That's Construction Manager at Risk. And that means we get hired on at the same time as the architect, and we're involved in bringing the vision of the architect and the passion of the owner to play. And for me, that was just a high impact point to be involved in, right? Estimators get a bad rap. If you go to any university campus, they'll tell you you want to be a project manager all day long, and estimating is for the birds. But what I've found is if we do our job right in pre-construction and estimating in the field, it's just a matter of executing what we've done ahead of the shovel in the ground. So that's what I do for Tellefsen. I've been there 6.5 years. Like I said, I started out in the field about a year and a half, and then gravitated into the department. Before that, I was in public relations. I'm actually a career change guy. A lot of folks in the construction industry are career change people. I came out of Texas Tech University with a degree in public relations, did that for 10 years, and decided I didn't like it that much. In public relations, marketing, advertising, that is a world spent mostly convincing the people who are buying from you that you're doing anything at all. And coming to the construction industry, it's pretty easy to turn around and say, we built that building there, and you can like it or not like it, but I don't have to validate the work that I've done. And that was real refreshing. I think that as a recruiter in the industry, you meet a lot of people who are just real happy to be able to point at what they've done with their hard effort every day, and that's me too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And nothing against other careers, but there certainly is a distinct satisfaction at being able to point at something and said, we, our team, our company, we built that, and this is what we did.
Yeah, it's an added bonus at Tellefsen. Tellefsen is, as I said, been in the Houston area 112 years. We don't work elsewhere. Our industrial company works nationwide, but Tellefsen is rooted in Houston, and it's a family-owned company, 4 generations. So the family it has deep relationships with the prolific builders in the city. And over time, because we are so connected to the community projects in the city, we have really become the city's curators. Many of the most important projects, building structures in the city, from a community standpoint, are buildings we've built and sometimes rebuilt, added on to, renovated, etc. And so there's an added passion growing up in the Houston area to work for the company that does build many of the most important things that we interact with every day. We've done $80 million at the zoo here recently. We're finishing that next year. And we were so fortunate to be entrusted with that project, but it's an extra special thing to walk the zoo with your kids and say, hey, I had a part of this project that's now blessing you and blessing other families in the city that we care so much about. So it is an added bonus to drive around a city you love and you plan to stay in for the rest of your life and say, hey, we've had a hand in creating the skyline.
It's amazing. And I'm sure that sense of giving back to the community is really strong with the people over there.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Now, you mentioned you made a transition from public relations into construction. We do see a lot of transition. That's a unique one. What was it about the industry that drew you in?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was a journey for me, as it is for most. I came out of school having received a degree in public relations, and I'm not sure that I really understood going to school what that meant. I was good with people, and I had friends that told me, "You're good with people. You should be in communications. You should be in public relations." And it's a field I have a tremendous respect for. The work is important. Um, it's very important. But over 10 years' time, as I said, I spent quite a bit of my time trying to convince folks that were paying for public relations, advertising, communications out of the same money that they put bread on their table, small business owners, trying to convince them that that worked. And all too often, a communication strategy is something that plays out over a long period of time, and is potentially intangible. And I can understand why small business owners could get frustrated with paying for those services and not being able to necessarily demonstrate the outcome and draw a direct link. Well, 9 years into that career, my wife discovered that we were going to have our second child. We'd had one child, and I was actually working as a consultant in the Houston area doing media marketing. And we found out we were going to have a second child. And my wife, who is a nurse by trade, she was working for MD Anderson, said that she would like to stay home with our kiddos, that that was going to be important to her as we moved into child number two. And I said, well, this may sound wild, but to be honest, I'd like to radically change my career. And it sounds like just as good a time as any to push the pause button on our life and dramatically reorient it. So I spent a lot of time searching, and I knew I had a talent for project management. I discovered that in the 10 years that followed my exit from tech. And I started by searching which industries employ project managers. And so I found that to be IT, healthcare, oil and gas, and construction. And of all of those, I thought construction, most importantly, I would have to go back and get a 4-year degree for. And it really wasn't going to fit our family. And so I actually put construction kind of over here to the side in that consideration. But I targeted primarily the oil and gas industry because I had relationships in the industry already. And I went back to San Jacinto College just to get a scheduler and an estimator coursework to validate the contribution I could make in that industry.
Mhm.
And when I went back to San Jacinto College, which is a junior college here in the area, great local college that serves the area really well, I discovered quickly that because of the coursework I'd already done, that I could make a change within a year, that I could get an associate's in construction management with a year's worth of work if I worked pretty hard. And
Wow.
so that was an advantage for me. I'd grown up pretty handy. I had done some remodeling when I was in college. I'd done a lot of projects when I was in high school working for other folks, and I enjoyed working with my hands, the true hammer and nail part of the industry. But seeing the project come to life was something that certainly thrilled me. And so the opportunity to look back into that industry as a career was a big deal. And so I made the change. I put together the coursework and I started down the path at San Jacinto College to get that associate's in construction management that would launch me out into the field. And then somewhat fortuitously, my third month at San Jacinto College, Tellefson, the company I work for now, put a construction fence up around the building adjacent to the building I was going to school in. And that seemed to be quite advantageous to me. So I walked into their job trailer and I said, hey, I think you guys need an intern if you're going to build here at Sanjak. And they said, we think you're right. So they hired me as an intern for the remainder of the year. When I graduated, they brought me on full time. So it really was a Cinderella story, if you will. It was a transition that not a lot of people get. Truth be told, Tellefson took a chance on me. I think guys coming out of junior colleges, right, wrong, or indifferent, often wind up at maybe B-tier subcontractors to start and work their way up. So it was very kind of the company to take a chance on me, and I hope I've worked hard for them since then. But yeah, it was not a traditional journey.
That's a really interesting story. And I've heard a lot of them, but combine what you did, the work involved, and then the chance encounter.
Mhm.
That's awesome to hear, man.
Yeah.
Coming from such a different industry, right? What was the biggest challenge, or like what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in that transition?
Yeah, I think that's a great question too. I think two things come to mind. First of all, I think the unspoken expectations of the industry were a difficult thing for me to overcome. Much of my experience to date had been somewhat unilateral in its experience, not working in a matrix or organization, not working with multiple layers of management, and then not working with the superintendent class. Right, it was a sort of a shock to me, and a transition, maybe is the right way to say it, to move from sort of an artsy culture, right? Marketing and communications, public relations is largely creatives, right? They dress different, talk different, live different, and then to move over into an industry that at least in the field level is largely populated by folks that came up through the ranks. They've worked to where they are the hard way, and there's an entire culture that exists there and expectations that were different. And so I'm a hard charging, move quickly kind of guy. And I probably wasn't on the job 2 or 3 months before the superintendent called me into his office and very graciously but sternly set me straight on a few things that I was not doing the way that the
Yeah.
culture would expect it. So I'll spare you the examples, but it was enlightening to say, hey, I'm in a different place with different people now,
Yeah.
and that may mean I need to behave differently. So that learning curve was an important one, and participating in the intern program at Tellefson, now recruiting kids out of college and seeing them come in, it's a similar thing, and we actually work hard to set them up for success as they go out to the job site and say, hey, these guys running the projects, they've worked hard, they've earned every bit of the respect that they're due, and there is a way that things operate, and it's going to be countercultural to you, and it's important that you understand that there's a way you need to interact with the field that gives them the respect that's appropriate. So yeah, that was one big thing. And then the other thing I think is learning the terminology and learning construction. Really, moving into commercial construction is a lot different than residential construction.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly, when you spend time with the design team, in particular, guys that have a 4-year degree, they've gone through the means and methods classes at places like University of Houston and Texas A&M, where they learn whether to use a
Mhm.
panhead screw or a countersink screw. They understand the reasons why we choose the things we choose. Well, add the design team into the mix, and that's an entirely new level when you're interacting with
Yeah.
architects and engineers who have an entire vocabulary. They know the right term for a condition, and they're going to employ that. And um, getting to a point quickly, and I had really great mentors and trainers early in my career who would literally drive me around town, and we'd sit and we'd look at a building on our lunch break, and we would talk through the building systems. Right, here's the glazing plane, and here is what fire stop looks like, and here's how we deal with this, and here's what's happening behind that wall. But it was still a steep curve to get into the discussion and be able to speak intelligently about what we were building.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned a superintendent kind of setting you straight. I don't think there's any position more well suited in the construction industry than the role of the super, and
Yeah,
enforcing that company culture and letting the traditions and norms. And the construction field is unique. There's definitely stereotypes about it, but one thing I've always appreciated is I feel more often than not you're dealing with people that are straight shooters. They're very direct and open and honest with you. And for people that come from different backgrounds or different industries, that type of directness can be a culture shock, to say the least.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. But the thing to keep in mind, and this is true of the design team too, is these folks have earned it. They really
Absolutely.
have. Too many of us are going through life doing the bare minimum, maybe because we don't know any better, but we're not true experts in our field. We're making a minimum contribution and getting compensated for it and living that way. But the guys that go build these buildings, Tellefson won't turn a superintendent loose until they have seen every bit of the building they're going to build, seen it built, because they bear the responsibility of the project. Truly, the construction of the project is on their shoulders. The liability of the project is on their shoulders. When you realize that, when a painter walks off the job site and rinses his paintbrush out in the county sewer system, that's going to be detected by monitors downstream, and a guy's going to show up at the job site, and he's going to say, "Hey, we know that there was paint rinsed out in the storm system, and we're here to find you." And when they're here to find you, they don't find the project; they find the superintendent. Pull out your driver's license. We're finding you personally for this project. And that liability is incredible. That burden is incredible. And the fact that these guys would take that on is a big deal, and they really should be respected for it.
That, along with the fact that there's such a low margin of error acceptability in the field of construction. Not only are buildings at risk, but people's lives are at risk.
Yeah.
Slips, falls, injuries at work, buildings collapsing days, weeks, or months after completion, and in some cases years. There's serious implications to doing things right the first time.
Yeah.
One thing I've always respected about the industry is the commitment to craftsmanship, the commitment to quality, and almost the unacceptability of anything except absolute perfection in building the project right the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's something you see and something you admire too in your day-to-day.
Yeah, I really do. I really enjoy the guys that we employ in those positions. I have the utmost respect for them, but I also just like them. I like going out to the job site, visiting with them, walking with them. But Jeff, I think I know one of the focuses of your group in this podcast has a lot to do with recruiting people into the industry who maybe because of the stigma steer away from it. Maybe they just grew up in a time and a place where mom and dad told them to go to college and get a degree. Um, but when you talk about what draws people to a superintendent position or to a pre-construction position, because this estimators get a similar rap, and we spend most of our time in our intern program untangling that stigma around project managers that draws everyone to them, and helping people understand that if they want to make an impact, truthfully, pre-construction and superintending are places to be. And that's not to devalue the role of the project manager. It's important. It's where I started. It's where the money is. It's where the communication happens. It's an important position. But when you're sitting there in high school and you're thinking, what am I going to do with my life? There really is more than just money, and superintendents are paid well. Estimators are paid well as well. But as a guy who's pushing 40, I'm a guy that's looking to make an impact, right? I want to go to work every day and do something that does change lives, that's serious business, that cares for other people. And I think those are things that we should talk about when we talk about recruiting people into the field, because I think it plays to the most important things that a man wants in particular, and certainly a woman as well, right? A guy wants to go to work and do a job and make a difference. And you have that opportunity in superintending for the reasons that you just referenced.
Exactly. You understand the point of the podcast too, which is really helping people of all ages, especially young people, see construction as a viable career. People will hear me say this once, twice, I will beat the point into the ground. A lot of folks growing up are told the same thing. They're told, go to college, get a real job, go into IT, go into finance, become a lawyer, a doctor. And those are all great options if that's what you truly want to do. Very seldomly, if ever, does young Johnny here, you know what, go into construction. It's a great field with great paying jobs. The people are phenomenal, and you can go to school or you cannot go to school and you can still be successful. They never hear that. A lot of people either fall into it or they have a friend or a family that expose them to it. But right now, there just are not enough initiatives in school, in community, or even at the family level that is encouraging folks to explore construction and the trades as viable options.
Yeah.
So there's really two things that need to happen. One is remove the stigma of the trades. And then two is educate folks as to what their options actually are. If you want to be a project manager, great. If you want to be an estimator, superintendent, great. If you want to be an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter, or you want to work in drywall, whatever, there are hundreds of options. I can't even begin to think of how many there are if you want to take that path. But we need to start educating folks at a younger age on what those paths are and help it be seen as a viable option and not as a second, third, fourth choice or something that you fall into later in life.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think back to my days in high school. I mentioned that I went to school in public relations because somebody told me I'd be good at it, right?
Sure.
And for that, I'll be honest with you, had intended to go to school for trumpet performance. I was good. I was good at band, and I liked it. And I liked my band teacher. And I thought, that's what I want to do with my life. How many people go aspire to be restaurant managers? Because they've gone to restaurants and their first job was, working the fry line in an Outback. And what that tells me is that folks coming out of high school often only know the jobs that they've seen. Maybe mom or dad or a family friend had a job, and so you have access to that job. But generally, you really have no idea how many options there are to make money in the world, and more than likely, you don't have any training or assessment of what your personal skill set and personality are and where you would best fit in, right? I think that high school counselors have done their best effort to do that, but there's a lot of kids in each high school, a lot of folks to work through, and frankly, not a lot of folks that have been focused on that. Hey, at the end of this 4 years, you need to get out and start providing for yourself. You're going to meet a man or a woman that you want to settle down with, and you're going to want to have kids, and all that costs money, and you need to start now thinking that direction. And so, college or whatever you do after high school winds up being sort of like an advanced elective. You go and we're just going to do something that interests me, but we really don't connect the dots very well on how to make a living at that. And so, there are an increasing number of programs going into the high schools, at least in the Houston area. We discussed earlier a nationwide program that, with ACE Mentorship that is reaching out to high school kids and saying, let us expose you to what's available. And that's a focus we have here at Tellefson. One of our owners' children is actually at a ninth grade campus in the city. And this campus is pretty savvy. They've caught on to the fact that quite a few of the adults for their children are business owners. And they said, let's start a 1 or 2 week internship opportunity during the summer for ninth graders. You're coming out of your ninth grade year and you get 10 or 12 choices. Go spend a week at, Heinz Building Management or Tellefson Concrete Services or, whatever place number 3 is, and just see what that's like. What do they do? What do the people there have smiles on their faces? Does it happen at a time of day that you like? Does it look interesting to you? Doing that at ninth grade, and I was looking through the email thread responses to this request because running our internship program, our owner had sent me the email and asked me to craft something for this internship. And I saw business owner after business owner say, "Gosh, I wish this had been available to me in the ninth grade."
Right.
And looking back, all too often we say, "Wow, I wish I'd had that guidance sooner." And so what we focus on at Tellefson, when we have an opportunity to connect with a young person, whether that's participating in ACE or participating in this mentorship or the interns that come to us out of college, is actually exposing them to the breadth of possibilities within the industry, right? Our formal internship program for college kids, they may be working in the project management trailer and walking the job site with the superintendent, but we encourage them and even set up mixers for them to meet vendors, to meet subcontractors, to meet inspectors, to meet quality assurance people. And one of the things I'm proud about in our program is if we look at the 60 plus kids that have come through our program in the last 10 years, a surprising number of them have gone on to not work for GCs. We had a kid that made a connection at CenterPoint, which is the energy provider here in town, and he's gone on to be a part of their construction department. We've got a guy that's working at the city now. He went on to be a project manager for the city of Houston. We've got folks that have gone on to subcontractors, formed relationships with subcontractors. They're doing that. We've got folks that have gone on to work for vendors, and that's something that we're very passionate is about saying. Even within construction, it's not just superintendent, project manager, estimator.
Mhm.
There are dozens of things that you can make a living doing. And to put a fine point on this thought is no one of us is going to work 40 years doing one thing. So in fact, look at all of these things and consider a path that says maybe I'll do 4, 5, or 6 of those things if I'm smart about how I move through the industry. And maybe, just maybe, some of those things stack on top of each other. So maybe I should go be an estimator for 4 or 8 years and learn about construction with 2, 3, 4 projects a week in my office, and then turn around and go out and do my time as a project manager, and then go on and be an owner's representative. You know, and we just love telling people about all the interesting roles there are in our field.
Yeah, it's, what's really interesting too is the careers in construction. They can go very linear or they can be very dynamic, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, where you can go, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, or you can go from 1 to 4 and go back to 2 and 3.
Mhm.
And that's really unique. What do you think, outside of the mentorships and the internships that you're doing right now, what else do you think can be done at a wider level to help people at a young age be aware that these are viable options?
Yeah, well, I'll speak to one more thing that's being done that I'm real pleased with, though I'm
Okay.
not directly related. Our AGC and ABC, the trade organizations, are doing a tremendous job in the Houston area of uh, giving people an understanding of what career possibilities are out there, and then connecting them to, and in this case, particularly subcontractors, connecting them to the opportunity with the subcontractor that provides training and says, okay, 11th grader, if you know that you want to come out of high school and go straight to work, or maybe that's the only option you have, here's a journeyman program for you. We'll start you now, and start to work through these things. You can test drive it, see if you like it, and go from there. And what the career organizations are doing, or the subcontractor organizations, ABC, AGC, they're setting up vocational training. They're setting up uh, booths at their career fairs for high schoolers, and
Mhm.
saying, "Come and consider this," because, like you started the podcast with, um, yes, at the GC level, at the management level, we do need people, but truthfully, the greatest need is at the subcontractor and trade level, saying, "Hey, you can make a great living as a plumber. There's a desperate need for that." And if you're a guy that says college isn't for me, maybe I don't want to, maybe I can't. Uh, our organizations are doing a great job of going into the schools in the Houston area and saying, here are viable options for you. And it starts today, and it's this many dollars, and all you have to do is pull the trigger. And gosh, I was on a conference call the beginning of the fall. Had been invited to be a part, just with the nature of what I do at Telepson, been invited to be a part of that call, and the passion on the call, and the industry leaders on the call was just astounding to me. How many people in the Houston area were committed? Big companies, big drywall companies, big electricians, saying, I'm going to give of my time to make a connection with the high school student in order to preserve them and preserve the trade moving forward. And in the Houston area, I think we're doing something special.
It's really interesting you bring that up. And I think that's a great thing to do. I think one of the biggest changes people can make is at that middle school level, where someone is deciding, depending on what town, what high school am I going to go to? What am I going to do? I remember growing up that if you went to the tech or the vocational school, it was because you weren't smart enough or you were a troubled kid, all of these wrong assumptions. So I think if you can start educating kids at the middle school level and give them a choice, do you want to go to a tech school? Do you want to go to a vocational school, start studying a craft and start putting work in, getting paid for it, and, at the end come out ready to go with a career, I think that's a great option. One thing that we do at Raymond Church Group is, speak at events for these organizations that are getting young people into the trade and educate them. And we're doing more outreach to local schools and different communities, saying, these are great fields to get involved with. This is why we recruit in this field day and night. We've been doing it for 7 years, and this is what we've seen. One thing that's really interesting about construction is it's been one of the really few bright spots in the economy for the past year. Not only has it been an essential business, but it's been a very bright one as well. And kind of shifting gears here, the pandemic forced a lot of industries to change, some for better, some for worse, some temporarily, and some permanently. Construction, I think, is one of the industries that shifted for the better. A couple of changes we saw was technology and the way that folks are using technology. And the second was communication, teams that could communicate with one another and work effectively, both individually and as a group. They really were the brightest stars. Teams that really lacked that trust and that communication, they really struggled over the past year. And I'm curious what you've seen, what your company has seen that shifted over the last year.
Yeah, that's very insightful, and I enjoy you even sharing what you've seen in terms of trends. Gosh, it's been a wild ride for us, hasn't it?
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine running a company in the last year of any kind, and certainly have friends at the senior level at Tellefson that I've watched closely as they've wrestled with every decision and how to balance putting bread on people's table with protecting people. Right, has been a challenge for them. No doubt, technology, big driver. Moving an industry that is really at the low end of the adoption curve when it comes to technology. I think it's construction and farming, right, are way behind the curve in terms of implementing technological change. And the requirements pressed down from the owners have demanded that if we're going to continue to be allowed to work on their property, we have to change. And so you see things like going completely paperless being a big deal. Tracking your workers across the job site has gone from being maybe a luxury to essential in order to keep folks safe and to track virus spread and that sort of thing. Certainly communication among teams outside of the construction site has been a big deal, right? Getting together and keeping projects moving forward, design team members, pre-construction folks, and moving from, the page turn meeting that happens in the office with the 34 by 40 set of documents to doing that online in a way that people can still can make a contribution and still make a great product has been big as well. When I talk about paperless, for us, Tellefson was already headed in a direction of the use of iPads instead of plans out in the field. And what that has really done for us, there's a variety of things, but it has improved communication in terms of changes to the documents, right? When we go to build a building, surprisingly, the documents are not yet finished. There are many questions that remain and changes that occur. Sometimes they're owner changes, sometimes they're the result of questions from a subcontractor and the answer to the design team. And keeping everybody on the team up to speed with those things has always been a challenge, right? We have put construction in the field, I'm sad to say, that didn't belong there because of a design change that happened last week or the week before, right? And then had to tear it out and start all over again. And that's not efficient. And so using PlanGrid, for us, we use a product called PlanGrid that displays plans digitally on an iPad. But PlanGrid allows all team members to communicate in real time through the same plan set. And it also allows us to keep plan sets updated. So when a change occurs, that change in the plans is pushed into the public set, but it's also provides a notification to subcontractors that says, hey, if there's a cost change related to this document change, you need to let us know within 7 days, right? And it's really unified the communication across all parties. So those things have been really positive for us, I think. And then you see
Agreed.
just general efficiencies occur, right? People who said, "Gosh, if we have to do it the hard way, I don't think we really need to do that anymore." So things that we were allowed uh, to do and be inefficient in the past have gone away because if it becomes harder to do that, maybe logistically, maybe because of where people are working from, maybe just sheer time consumption, it just has gone away, and I think that's a positive thing. And then finally, staffing, I think has been a big thing for us. The opportunity um, to work hard to keep our core people employed, regardless of whether or not we have a job. I'm always happy to share that all 5 of our owners forfeited their salary last year completely, 100% of salary. Won't start again until January of next year, so that we can keep more of our employees employed, regardless of how many jobs we had. That's massive, right? But that kind of contribution drove everybody in the company to be more efficient in how they spent the dollars, right? We did some repositioning within the company to change the way we're spending dollars. Guys in the field felt the rallying cry, led by the very top of the company to be as efficient as possible. At the end of the day, we're our owner's fiduciary, and so I think that's real healthy. So keeping staff and cost efficiency uh, has been another thing that we've seen as a positive outcome.
One thing we've noticed clients asking for more and more is not only, find me a good super, a good PM, and this is why, but they want that tech savvy requirement. And it was on the rise for the past couple of years, but now I feel like folks are not only required to know how to get things done, but how to get them done in the most efficient way, with as much automation or technology as possible. Very rarely now do we ever see someone saying, "Oh, I'm doing everything pen and paper," where maybe 20% of our clients would do that. That number is likely down to 5 or 10 now, if that.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And for me, what that says is it's an exciting time to be in construction, right? The entire industry is changing technologically. The advancements that we'll see in the next 20 years won't be like anything we've seen in the last 100 years. And we really do need the best and the brightest to execute that. We need people who will understand how we've done it and say, "I think we could do it differently." And maybe even say, "Hey, I could introduce this piece of technology that would help us do it really differently and much better," right? You talk about estimators, we're not too far down the road from fully automating everything that an estimator does. And so when you do that, what do you do with an estimator? Well, the truth of the matter is that means that that individual who's probably pretty savvy in construction has more time that he used to spend counting beans to weigh in with the design team, and pre-construction really becomes a value add at that point to the owner. Whereas perhaps in the past, the estimator would take the plan set, go into his office for a week or 4 weeks, and come out and tell you you don't have enough money, and then start slashing your budget wildly to get you back to your budget. Now that guy has the opportunity to do that work in a week, provide maybe real time response. Hey, I'm going to take these plans, I'm going to analyze them quickly, pull quantities digitally, and come back and say, this is how the documents have changed in 2, 3, 4 days time. And then spend the time
Literally.
with the team to say, yeah, literally, and then spend the time leading the team to say, there's a better way to skin this cat, and let's use this data we've got to really create the most efficient version of the building for the owner, the best use of their money. And I think that's real encouraging, but it all starts with people who say, yes, it may have been comforting to sit at my desk for hours on end in the past and, color in between the lines, counting square foot of carpet and linear foot of drywall. But now I need to get that done as quickly as possible. And so I'm willing to entertain a new technology that radically transforms how I do that takeoff, how I quantify the units. I'm willing to make that change because I understand what's being asked of me now is radically different.
Those are really good points. I think one of the biggest takeaways is as the technology evolves and the job evolves, the responsibilities evolve, the person has to evolve with them too.
Mhm.
An estimator that was an expert at their craft 10 years ago may be able to get the job done at a decent clip, but the estimator of today looks nothing like the estimator of yesterday, nor will they look like the estimator of tomorrow.
Mhm.
I really like your point about farming and construction typically being the last to change. And I've always asked myself why that's the case. I don't yet have a concrete answer. I have some ideas, but you're absolutely right. Construction is one of the last industries to get on board with changes in technology, automation, peoples, and processes. But I think one thing, if anything good has come out of the last year, is that the companies who have been early adopters of change and taken initiative and been proactive rather than reactive, they are going to outperform individuals who wanted to keep doing things the old way again and again and again. And unfortunately, those firms who refuse to change, they will either become obsolete or simply get driven out of business.
Yeah, that's at a global level, that's a discussion we should all be having. And it's a hard one to have because it requires seeing things that don't yet exist, right? But some would consider it an exciting time and some might consider it a terrifying time. But if the
Yeah.
maxim is that ultimately technology, the introduction of technology reduces the field to the people who use the technology best, that means that so many people are going to be cut literally out of the market because their ability to use and capitalize on changing technology was low, if non-existent. And I'll give you one example. We talk about robots, and robots are maybe they're a novelty in construction. We've all seen videos of 3D printed concrete homes, and we've seen the robot that installs drywall in Japan, and we know that it's coming, but to think critically about the implementation of that in real time, there's a mechanical company here in the Houston area that bought one of the strength assist suits, right, the exoskeleton, for a couple of team members, and went in and said, well, what if you went in and you installed duct and you were wearing this suit, and what they found is that they installed duct faster, but the person actually got slowed down for all the gawking at the suit. And that sort of thing makes consideration of technology undesirable. But when you think about robots, at the end of the day, a robot can build round the clock, quiet. So play that tape to the end and say, what if a company here in town was adept at introducing robots at every level, and even at 50% of the level, the compression of their schedule would be by 50%. So if you have a contractor that says, I'll build you that education building and we're going to be ready 3 semesters from now, or I'll build you the education building and we're going to be ready for the fall semester, that's lights out. And by the time somebody grabs a hold of that, and they're going to be working quietly in the corner, nobody's going to know, and then they're going to emerge on the scene, and with a significant change, a significant competitive edge, they're going to be so far ahead that anybody else trying to catch up will struggle to do so. And that's just one idea in all that's coming down the pipeline. But gosh, for a construction company to say, we're going to look way out there in the future, we're going to base a future business model on the use of AI and the use of robot technology, that'd be radical and it'd be costly. But like you said, what's the cost of continuing to do business in the future when the judgment day comes, right? When the pandemic shows up and your technology wasn't in place and you get snuffed out because you just can't communicate. And we saw it happen already. So we probably ought to pay attention and get ready to see it happen again.
Agreed. There's a great little one-liner I'm reminded of often, and it's adapt or die. Companies either adapt or they don't. And oftentimes the cost of inaction far outweighs the cost of acting and being wrong and trying something new.
Yeah, and isn't it the truth that in all things there are winners and losers? Oh, yeah. And as a business leader, you have to decide if you're going to continue to be a winner or a loser, because in the carnage, so to speak, there's going to be a lot of wins for the person that was successful. There's going to be a lot of things that just shrivel up and die, and you're out there at a fire sale picking up the nicest things off the pavement and paying bottom dollar for them. So it's not just continuing to do business, but it's also, if the construction industry radically changes in the next 20 years, not only are you positioning yourself to be at the forefront of that, but you're also positioning yourself to be the beneficiary of everyone else's loss, right? And that's also a pretty powerful idea.
History is written by the winners, right? One thing that's really stuck out about the whole last year and a half or so is much success in the construction field has been either industry or geographically focused. And what I mean by that is, if you were in healthcare, cold storage, critical facilities, data center, if that was your industry, your niche, you did great. If you were in the Southeast, the Midwest, and you were in basically anything with the exception of a few industries, you more likely far outperformed companies that were located in the West Coast or even the Northeast. And a lot of that, I think, came down to a few things. The decision to let industries operate, put certain parameters in place versus close them down completely. But what we're seeing right now is there is a huge population migration to the South and to the Midwest. I think a lot of that was already in play due to different things like taxation, quality of life. But I do think COVID has been the great accelerator of trends. And folks who looked and said, for example, if they're in New York, they said all the restaurants I liked eating at are shut down. And, early on, I couldn't go to the park or I couldn't leave my house or really do anything. And then they look at folks who are doing things safely in Florida, Texas, two of my favorite examples. And they see that those people, they adapted, they made changes, and they were able to do a lot of what they wanted to do. That person starts thinking, maybe where I'm at is not the best choice for me and my family. And I think the impact of that migration from different areas of the country to the South and the Midwest, I think, we're starting to see the early impacts of it. Every 90% of our clients are in those areas, and they're doing really well. But I think you're going to see continuing acceleration in construction in those geographies. And the expression I like to use is, those states, they are on fire, man. They are just busier than they know what to do with. And if you think you have a problem finding people to do the job now, just wait to see what the next 6 to 18 months brings, and then some.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much of that, right, as a business leader, but also as somebody entering the industry, is looking out ahead at where the business is going to be. Again, it seems like a far-fetched idea, but it really isn't. Who's going to build on Mars? Who's going to build on the moon? We're going to need somebody
Elon
to build
Musk.
things there. Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. But Elon Musk can't swing all the hammers, right?
Thankfully now.
And one thing that's always fun, we talk to our interns. We say, look, you guys have to do a couple of different kinds of learning. You need to learn to build today, the physical principles that drive construction. You need to become a craftsman in that way. But you also need to figure out a way to study the trends that are coming, because it's going to be completely new. You're going to run companies that do things that haven't even been thought of right now. And for the person that says, wow, that's a tall drink to drink, but I'm willing to, boy, are they going to be successful. Like we've not ever seen middle-class people be successful, quite frankly. The opportunity, if we watch the guys that have made money in the internet in the last 25 years, no one dreamed of wealth creation like that. And the same opportunity is here for all of us today to say, in the next 20 or 30 years or 50 years at the most, but within your working lifetime, kid coming out of high school, we're going to do so many things that have not even been dreamt of yet today. That opportunity for you is a powerful thing.
Agreed. just recently, several weeks back, I spoke with an individual who says that he now has the technology to use a drone or a camera to go to customer's house. He's on the residential side, and the drone will take measurements for him and spit out the materials and what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's just on him to acquire them and have the labor install them. I mean, things are moving at such a rapid clip. I feel like I look at what was being done 2 or 3 years ago, and most of it seems just obsolete at this point.
And let's be honest, that is a mindset that more people, myself included, need to adopt.
Yes.
That's hard. I'd rather go about my business, do the thing I've always done, come home and sit on my couch,
Sure.
generally speaking. The agility that it takes. We talked just today about changing the mindset, an ongoing change in mindset at Tellefson from builders first to business people first, to say, when you're sitting at your job site, are you looking around for the next opportunity? And we talked about a situation in particular, an addition that is going to occur on one of our projects. And the thought was, the project team thinks, gosh, that's just another hassle. That's another RFI I have to write. That's another change order that has to occur. But if you're a business person, you're saying, hey, that's an increase to the contract. Why am I not out walking my job site every day looking for that opportunity? And the same thing applies to the bottom line with the application of technology you just described, right? Why am I not going to the trade shows and learning about the advance in technology to find that constant in that I can introduce and increase my profit margin, even the slightest bit? And but that is a mindset. The world, the future is demanding more and more of us be entrepreneurs, and that is a hard transition to make. But gosh, let's call it what it is and encourage people, set them up for success to do that for all of our benefit.
That's a really good point. I love the idea of that everyone can be an entrepreneur in their own way. And the more I've thought about this over the years, is I think that a lot of folks get stuck in this industry doing things the old way because it's worked, varying degrees of what success may look like, but it's worked, because construction is essential. And like I like to say, building ain't going to build itself. You need people to do it. But as we move to what I think is a newer economy and in a newer way of doing things in this industry, the rewards, the benefits, and the spoils are going to go to people who are thinking ahead, thinking big, thinking about what's in front of them, and having that entrepreneurial mindset and saying, what can be changed here? What can I do that I didn't do before? And what can I be doing that no one else is doing right now? And
some of the best. Oh, I apologize for cutting you off.
Oh, no worries. I was going to say, I'm looking at the time. I want to be respectful of our schedule. So we do have a couple minutes. I just wanted to let you know in case we're running
I appreciate
over.
that.
Sure.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Right. I could talk about this all day.
Me too. Well, let me throw a last piece out here.
Sure.
One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received was poised in the form of a question. And the guy said, Paul, are you about results or are you about effort? I'll say it again. He said, are you about results or are you about effort? And I remember I was driving at the time. I was using my hands-free device, but I was driving. I remember the intersection I was passing through as I contemplated the fact that it pains me to say that I'm about effort. I know I'm supposed to be about results, but it's real comfortable to go into my office and do what I'm supposed to do and emerge at the end of the day and come back tomorrow and do it with total disregard for whether or not it moves the needle. That is a natural place for me. And admitting that a few years ago was the first step to transition to a results mindset over an effort mindset, right? Just like the things we just talked about. Hey, if increasing the top line or bottom line revenue is the goal here, then I need to change the way I think to how do I do that? How do I do that? How do I do that? Instead of just mindlessly showing up, doing my job and spitting it out the way it's always been done, like you just described. And, I think that's something we're thoughtful about at Tellefson is how do we reward the growth of that mindset in our employees, right? Yes, we can all go to work and do it as it's always been done, and the buildings will get built, but we just spent 20 minutes talking about the perils of continuing in that mindset. But in the midst of it, we recognize that changing that mindset is something that each one of us has to do. Most of us are effort driven versus results driven.
Mhm.
And so how do you motivate employees? How do you change the incentive program? How do you educate them and inspire them to look at everything they do every day and say, how can I improve this? How can I change it? What can I learn that's coming down the pipeline that I need to be prepared for? And as you said here just now, the richest life is connected to that, right? At some point, we devalue the fact that doing it as it's always been done is going to wind up with a result none of us are really looking for, and we're not going to be pleased with it when it arrives. So we should all change now and be the victor that gets the spoils as things change. So you've inspired me today.
Great. You too. I think our viewers are going to love watching this show. And I can't say thanks enough. It was great having you on, Paul.